Swedish defense firm Saab is looking for Canada to purchase its Gripen jets, promising to create thousands of jobs in Canada along with it.
What if the most talked about fighter jet inside NATO right now is not American, not French, and not even built by a major military superpower? What if a country that stayed neutral for decades is suddenly shaping how Europe thinks about air combat? Over the past 2 years, NATO planners have quietly started asking hard questions about cost, readiness, and survival in a real war. They are looking at jets that can take off from roads, fly in freezing weather, and be fixed in minutes instead of hours. They are also watching smaller nations rethink expensive platforms that tie them too closely to one supplier. Behind closed doors, meetings in Brussels, Ramstein, and Stockholm are pointing to a shift that few expected. Something has clearly changed, and it is making alliance leaders pay attention. Join us in this video as we uncover why NATO is suddenly paying attention to Sweden's fighter jets. Canada just sent tremors through NATO's assumptions about where the alliance gets its air power, not because Ottawa alone changed course, but because a cluster of choices, events and hard facts have put one aircraft line, Sweden's Saab Gripen, on the table in a way it never was before. NATO planners and capitals are no longer glancing at Gripen as a regional workhorse. They are studying it as a pragmatic option that could change how the alliance posts air power, distributes maintenance, and shares combat data in the years ahead. This shift is not an accident. It started with Sweden itself, moved through changes in European defence spending after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and accelerated when Sweden stopped being a neutral neighbour and became a full NATO ally. The alliance is paying attention because the Gripen now promises an unusual mix: modern sensors and electronic warfare, low life cycle cost, and industrial packages that put production and software access within partner countries' control. Those three features together are turning heads. Sweden's formal entry into NATO in March 2024 changed the political framing immediately. Stockholm had been a long-term partner to NATO without membership for decades. When it joined, NATO gained new geography, new maritime depth, and new defence industry capacity. That industry capacity matters because it includes Saab, the company behind the JAS 39 Gripen. The Gripen was always a Scandinavian product designed for dispersed basing, rapid turnarounds and flexibility. Inside NATO, those attributes suddenly matter for the alliance's northern flank, where weather and runway infrastructure are often limiting factors. Sweden's accession meant NATO planners could now think about Swedish jets being available for alliance missions without the political friction that came with non-member sales. Sweden's membership altered logistics assumptions and made Gripen a NATO asset in practical terms. The Gripen itself has, beyond missiles, Saab invested heavily in electronic warfare and sensor architecture. Public material and defence analysis named the Arexis EW suite and modern avionics as key Gripen strengths. Electronic warfare is central to how a fighter survives and shapes the battle space in a heavily defended environment. The Gripen's approach is not to rely on extreme stealth coatings that demand specialised support infrastructure. Instead, it blends active and passive electronic warfare, agile radar modes, and sensor fusion to create survivable mission profiles. NATO members who worry about base vulnerability, logistics strain, or the cost of maintaining large stealth fleets find that approach attractive. It trades some pure stealth for flexibility, cheaper maintenance, and more sorties. For alliance planners, that trade is increasingly attractive for certain missions, especially in peripheral theatres like the Arctic or the Baltic approaches. Real-world operations and exercises made the change visible. Sweden moved Gripens into NATO exercises and air policing roles, including deployments in the alliance's enhanced air policing rotations. That movement is practical proof. Gripens are interoperable enough to fly NATO missions. When Sweden's Gripens show up in NATO training and policing missions, alliance planners see a plane that is already operational within their airspace rules, command and control links and rules of engagement. Integration during exercises simplifies the path to more formal deployment, and it signals that the jet is not just a national option. It is a tool NATO can draw on. That operational visibility matters politically and practically. Sales and export choices reinforced attention. Countries outside Europe are buying or testing Gripen E. Brazil has an active fleet and has done Meteor firings. Thailand and other countries have shown interest in Gripen models. Hungary signed a deal for Gripen jets in 2024 as part of its political rapprochement with Sweden's NATO accession. Each export decision carries operational and political weight. When Brazil proves the jet's missile and EW package in live tests, it creates public evidence for capability. When Hungary signs a purchase and builds formal defence ties with Sweden, it gives a precedent for NATO members working with Saab outside the US-dominated supply chain. Those sales also create economies of scale, which lowers unit costs and improves support networks. The more Gripens deployed globally, the easier it becomes to consider them in NATO planning. The alliance's attention is also a reaction to broader supply chain and political risks that surfaced after 2022. NATO members have been rethinking how to ensure resilience in wartime. The war in Ukraine showed how fragile long supply lines can be and how important local production and stockpiles are for ammunition, spares and repair capacity. Europe scrambled to scale munitions production, and defence industrial capacity became a strategic topic. Sweden's defence industry is part of that solution. Saab's expanding order book and rising share price reflects that broader surge in demand for European gear. Saab's public statements in 2025 about expanding production beyond Sweden and Brazil to meet rising demand show the company positioning itself as a European manufacturing partner, not just a Swedish vendor. NATO pays attention when a supplier can offer not only aircraft, but localised production lines and a route to regional supply resilience. Then there is cost. NATO is a coalition of many budgets. Not every member can or will buy stealthy fifth-generation jets at scale. Gripen's operating economics are part of why smaller or middleweight NATO partners find it appealing. Saab markets the Gripen E as a platform with lower acquisition and per-hour operational costs compared to fifth-generation fighters. For members that need continuous air policing, intercepts and forward presence, rather than deep penetration strike in heavily defended airspace, the arithmetic is persuasive. The alliance can stretch its overall patrol capacity if more members operate lower-cost but modern fighters. That matters when you consider the Baltic and Arctic regions, where persistent coverage matters as much as the ability to survive in the most contested airspace. Industrial offers change political calculus. A fighter sale is rarely only about planes, it is about local jobs, technology transfer, and industrial partnerships. Saab has been explicit in its offers to provide licensed production, local assembly, and supplier integration in buyer countries. Those offers sweeten political support. When a government can promise regional plant openings and thousands of jobs, the domestic debate shifts from abstract capability to concrete economic benefits. Reuters reporting in late 2025 and earlier in 2024 flagged Saab's active talks and possible partnerships. NATO capitals watch, because when an alliance partner secures local industry, it strengthens the alliance's industrial base and diversifies dependence on any single supplier nation. That is exactly what NATO planners say they want. More resilient, distributed production across Allied territory. There is also the interoperability question, and that is the trickiest part. The F-35 is a powerful integrating node for many NATO members. Its sensor fusion, data sharing, and standardized logistics create an operational web that is hard to replace. NATO planners will not walk away from that lightly. But interoperability is not a single-door problem. Data bridges, translation layers, and standardized link protocols can connect different platforms. Sweden's Gripen E is designed to integrate with NATO standards and to carry NATO standard weapons like AMRAAM and Meteor. NATO has already adapted to mixed fleets elsewhere. If enough partners choose to diversify, the alliance will increase investment in common data link standards and middleware to ensure that a mixed fleet can still function in coalition operations. That process takes money and time, but it is feasible. The immediate effect is that NATO planners are now adding Gripen options into contingency plans rather than assuming every ally flies the same jet. What changed recently that made NATO's attention sudden? There are several proximate triggers. One was Sweden's accession to NATO itself, which removed political barriers to integrating Swedish capabilities in alliance plans. Another was the practical proof points from exercise and real-world testing, Gripen jets flying in NATO drills, and Gripen E firing Meteor missiles in Brazil supplied public evidence of capability. A third was industry movement. Saab's public remarks in 2025 about scaling production and pursuing partnerships showed a company ready to act as a regional supplier, not merely an exporter. Finally, the broader reshaping of European defence spending and the push to shore up munitions and local industry after the Ukraine war created appetite to look beyond traditional suppliers. Those triggers combined to concentrate NATO attention quickly. This attention is not uniform across the alliance. Large NATO members with big defence budgets and existing investments in high-end stealth capabilities will treat Gripen as one more tool. Smaller and medium-sized members view it differently, as a way to grow patrol capacity without staggering costs. Peripheral states such as the Baltic littorals, the Nordic countries and some Central European partners see the real value in a plane that is cheaper to operate from austere fields, integrates modern missiles and EW, and can be supported by regional production. That variation makes the alliance conversation complicated. NATO will have to avoid drawing a line that pits stealth first against capacity first. Instead, it will likely move toward an approach that mixes high-end, networked stealth jets with more numerous, cheaper, and resilient platforms for area control. Gripen fits that latter role well. There are policy consequences. If NATO accepts a larger role for Gripen-class aircraft, procurement and training pipelines will change. NATO air policing rotations could include Gripens more regularly. Flight hour budgets will reflect a mix of lower-cost patrol jets, plus a smaller cadre of fifth-generation assets for high-end tasks. Alliance doctrine will evolve to task allocation, which platforms hold the line in raised threat levels and which provide persistent presence. Budget committees in allied parliaments will see new choices. Defence industry strategies will shift toward interoperability middle layers, software and data bridges, rather than only towards single platform dependency. In short, NATO's posture would become more distributed and more resilient, but also more complex to manage. There are clear risks and trade-offs. Relying more on non-stealthy aircraft reduces the alliance's immediate capacity for highly contested suppression of enemy air defences missions. Those missions still require high-end stealth and sensor fusion capabilities. At the same time, having many more patrol-capable jets spread across Allied territory improves surveillance and early response. The scale of trade-off depends on likely threat scenarios. NATO planners must decide how much of the alliance's air power is deterrent presence and how much is strike and penetration. Neither role can be neglected. For many theatres, the Bottenamfraue and the Baltic and the Arctic, deterrent presence and reliable intercepts are the higher near-term priorities. For penetrative operations deeper into contested airspace, stealth platforms and allied integration remain key. Greenland to the Baltic is not a single fight. It will involve many missions, and NATO is preparing across the spectrum. The human dimension matters as well. Pilots, logisticians, procurement officials, and elected leaders will all shape the outcome. Air Force squadron commanders watching Gripens in exercises will form operational judgments on sortie rates and maintenance windows. Defence ministers will weigh domestic jobs and export potential. Finance ministries will measure the long-term sustainment bill against short-term industrial gains. Saab's offers for local production change the domestic political calculus in buyer countries. That is why sales often turn on industrial packages as much as on capability brochures. NATO attention is therefore a blend of operational interest and industrial politics. So what does the immediate future look like? Expect NATO to map Gripen into contingency planning, especially for northern and Baltic tasks. Expect more Gripen deployments to NATO exercises so alliance planners gain experience integrating data and missions with Gripen units. Expect Saab to continue to push for partnerships and localised production. The company itself has said it will explore producing Gripens outside Sweden and Brazil if demand justifies it. Expect more nations to publicly test or announce interest in Gripen if low-cost and industrial packages align with domestic politics. And expect a parallel push in NATO to invest in middleware and data link translation efforts so mixed fleets can operate more smoothly together. Those are not dramatic leaps. They are concrete steps the alliance will take if the pattern of Gripen sales and NATO integration continues. Let's be precise about certain things. Sweden formally became NATO's 32nd member in March 2024. Hungary signed a Gripen deal in February 2024 as part of its closer ties with Sweden. Brazil carried out Meteor missile firings from Gripen-E jets in late 2025, underscoring the aircraft's long-range air-to-air capability. Saab's business statements through 2025 show a major uptick in order interest, and the company publicly discussed expanding production footprints outside Sweden and Brazil to meet demand. NATO exercises in 2024 and 2025 included Swedish Gripens among participating assets, providing clear operational proof points. Those dates and incidents are the milestones by which diplomats and planners now measure Gripen's relevance. This is not to say the Gripen will displace fifth-generation fighters across NATO. That would be unrealistic and unnecessary. The alliance needs both deep penetration, stealth-capable platforms, and high-endurance, cost-efficient patrol aircraft. The current moment is about re-evaluating balance. The Gripen's case rests on three facts that together are changing NATO's view. It is modern enough to carry advanced missiles and a strong EW suite. It is economical enough to expand patrol capacity across many members. And it is industrially flexible enough to be produced or maintained regionally when vendors and partners set up localized lines. When those three facts align with political will, NATO pays attention. That is what we are seeing now. There is a big picture strategic point. NATO is an alliance that thrives on interoperability and shared doctrine. It is also a political organism, and political choices shape procurement. The Gripen's rise in NATO attention is not a technical surprise. It is the logical outcome of changing political geography, pressing operational needs in the north and east, and shifting industry landscapes. Sweden's entry into NATO removed political friction. The Ukraine war and supply chain shocks changed priorities. Saab's industrial offers turned capability into a political choice for governments that must deliver jobs and security at the same time. Another reason NATO planners keep circling back to Sweden's fighter jets is training and readiness time. Gripen units are known for fast pilot conversion and simpler ground crew requirements. Swedish doctrine was built around the idea that pilots might need to operate from dispersed bases with limited support after only short preparation. That mindset fits NATO's growing focus on readiness rather than perfection. In a crisis, the alliance does not just need the best aircraft on paper, it needs aircraft that can be flown, serviced and returned to the air quickly across many locations. Gripen's design philosophy supports that need in a very practical way. There is also the issue of runway denial. NATO planners openly worry about fixed airbases being targeted early in any major conflict. Gripen was built to operate from short runways and even reinforced roadways, something Sweden practiced for decades during the Cold War. This is not theory. Swedish Air Force units trained regularly on highway strips, with mobile fuel trucks and small maintenance teams. For NATO, this means Gripens can be spread across more locations, making it harder for any opponent to ground an entire air wing with a few strikes. That flexibility adds another layer of defence without massive new construction. Politically, Sweden's role inside NATO is still developing, but its defence industry already carries weight. Stockholm now has a direct voice in alliance planning, procurement talks, and long-term force design. That gives Saab easier access to NATO forums where future air power concepts are debated. It also means Gripen is discussed earlier in planning stages instead of being considered only after decisions are made. Over time, that presence matters. Taken together, these factors explain why NATO's attention has sharpened so quickly. Gripen is no longer viewed only as a national solution for Sweden or a budget option for smaller states. It is now part of a wider conversation about how NATO balances cost, readiness, and resilience. The alliance is not choosing one jet over another. It is adjusting how different tools fit together. And in that discussion, Sweden's fighter jets have earned a seat at the table. If you found this breakdown useful, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into military strategy and global defence shifts. Drop your thoughts in the comments and let us know whether you think Sweden's fighter jets will play a bigger role in NATO's future. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.